Today we continue our examination of the rise of a multipolar world with this week's look at the phenomenon as it occurs in Latin America. We discuss with journalist Stephen Sefton, based in Nicaragua, the multilateral organization UNASUR that has come to replace in many ways the U.S.-led Organization of American States. So, Stephen, unlike our usual, where we speak with you from Esteli, with the school that you work with, the school that you help run, you're speaking to us from where now today?
I'm down in Masaya, which is a very well-known town about 25, 30 kilometers south of Managua, the capital. And it's got a huge market. It's very well known for its crafts market.
And that's where you are, and so we may hear some people bargaining or enjoying themselves as we conduct this conversation. We're going to talk about, I guess, two of the organizations, one of the indigenous ones, and the other the remnant of the Monroe Doctrine, basically. So we're talking about UNASUR on the one hand and the OAS on another.
Yeah, and last week, you may remember we were talking about ALBA and why ALBA was such a challenge to the United States policy in Latin America and the Caribbean.
Right.
And the main reason was that it's a solidarity, cooperation-based organization, not one that's based on which is focused on the needs of the human person and the impoverished majority of their respective countries' populations, rather than on corporate profit. And so that is one of the reasons why the United States has been so intent on trying to destroy the Bolivarian revolution in Venezuela.
I would say the main reason, right?
Yeah, and also the Sandinista revolution in Nicaragua, and of course the Cuban Revolution, which has survived 60 years of sanctions. And that is precisely why ALBA was so important, because it provided a kind of a lifesaver to those countries, but because by cooperating together they were able to resist the effects of oppressive and repressive United States regional policy. So part of the inspiration for ALBA had kind of spread out thanks to Hugo Chavez in particular, but also Evo Morales of Bolivia in South America. And also Rafael Correa, because Ecuador was a member of ALBA as well, under the administration of President Rafael Correa. And so Ecuador and Bolivia and Venezuela played a very, very important role in setting up the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, which played a very strong role stabilizing in particular progressive governments in the region. And that came to the fore and I think it was around 2009, 2010, when the same right-wing extremists in Bolivia, in the so-called Crescent Moon part of Bolivia, in particular the huge Santa Cruz province, which is also in the news now, they've been trying to destabilize Bolivia for years, ever since Evo Morales won the presidency back in 2006. And in a time of particular intensity in their destabilization attempts, UNASUR played a very strong role giving support to the Bolivian government at a time when it was under severe pressure, not just from the internal right-wing separatists in Santa Cruz, but also internationally from both the United States and the European Union. And so that's why it was very important when a string of right-wing governments came to power from around 2015, 2016 onwards. Right. You remember that Mauricio Macri won the election in Argentina. I think it was back in 2015. And then the Brazilian right wing, with support of the US government, of course, staged a soft coup, what was called a soft coup, against Dilma Rousseff. And that inaugurated a period right wing, the ability of the right wing political movements, and especially the political movements that achieved governmental power back in that time between 2015 and to date. That led to a period in which, for example, in Brazil, in 2018, when Bolsonaro won, one of the first things he did was withdraw from UNASUR.
Right.
And also went in Ecuador.
Lenny Moreno, yep.
And in Moreno, actually shut down UNASUR's headquarters, which was based in Quito,
right.
The Ecuadorian capital.
How foolish!
And so,
how foolish,
Yeah. So and now the pendulum has swung again, and it looks as though we know that Lula da Silva is going to take office in January in Brazil.
That's right.
And one of the first things he's going to do is to rejoin UNASUR.
Right.
The Bolivian government is going to get a huge boost from that, because having a progressive government in Brazil supporting the policies of the current government of Luis Arce in Bolivia will be extremely important. And who knows, one of the uncertainties is what's going to happen in November 2023, when Argentina goes to national elections again. And it's very possible that the right wing may win those elections. So, but in any case, for now, it looks as though UNASUR is going to get a huge boost from the inauguration of Lula da Silva.
Yeah.
And that is very much a challenge to what we've been talking about all these years, the attempts by the United States to sustain the Monroe Doctrine and sustain the relevance of the Organization of American States, which progressive politicians here in Latin America and the Caribbean call the Ministry of the Colonies.
Right.
So that the reactivation of UNASUR will also give a tremendous boost to the community of Latin American and Caribbean states,
right.
Which has also suffered somewhat from the prevalence of more right-wing governments over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
So those are going to be big changes. Actually, please let me clarify something from an earlier program, an earlier conversation that we had.
Sure.
When we were talking about Mercosur, originally I mistakenly said, and although I did correct myself in that program, that the members were Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile. And of course, Chile is an associate member, right, but it's not a full member.
Right.
For the fourth main member is, of course, Paraguay, and I did make that correction in the program.
Right.
But I was mistaken, and I simply forgot that when I said that Mercosur is one of the oldest of the regional integration programs. Actually, the oldest integration program is actually called the Latin American Association for Integration, ALADI, by its Spanish acronym, and that was formed back in 1980, Don.
Right.
And although it's played a kind of background role, it's always been there promoting integration, more especially in terms of tariff arrangements and customs arrangements and that kind of thing. It hasn't played a strongly ideological political role as have ALBA, UNASUR, and CELAC.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but again, I think it's worth repeating that the organizations like ALBA, like UNASUR, and like CELAC itself, depending on the political forces driving it, all represent a very strong challenge to the U.S. Monroe Doctrine and its tool for implementing that doctrine, which is the Organization of American States.
You know, this is the same dynamic that we're seeing elsewhere in covering other regions. And we see one of the unifying forces, basically, has been the attempt of U.S. hegemony, sanctions and other things driving together all of the targets, and the entire hemisphere has been a target of the U.S. All right, we're out of time, so we'll speak with you again, Stephen, next week, and we really appreciate your time and effort.
Okay, you're very welcome, Don. Look forward to it.
Thank you. For KPFK, I'm Don DeBar.